Hi everyone, it's Mike Bird here with another episode of Nazareth Nicaea, the show where we keep you plugged into all the debates about the historical Jesus, the Christ of faith, and whatever there is in between. Now, you might recall that last week I had a great discussion with my good friend Dr. David Capes where we delved in Philippians 2 6 to 11. And because I had him on hand and he was there and available and a real great guy, very learned in all things about Pauline Christology, I thought I would give him another interview, another chat with him, this time about Colossians 1 15 to 20, something of the poor cousin of Pauline Christology, but it's a very significant text, a very important text for understanding what Jesus meant, how he was regarded as preeminent for Paul, or if not by Paul, at least in the Pauline corpus as we have it in the New Testament canon. And David knows his stuff on this, and he was pulling out stuff and mentioning stuff that even I'd either forgotten about or even I didn't know. So David really does know his stuff on early Christology. He's always great to listen to and talk to. He's a great chap. I know you'll love our discussion of Colossians 1 15 to 20. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Nazareth to Nicaea. Well, I'm back again with my good friend, Dr. David Capes. I mean, David, what's your current role these days? I mean, I get the feeling you may be working in the construction industry. Would that be a fair
We're
summation
doing
of
a
what you
lot.
do these days?
Yeah. I've got a hammer, and I know how to use it, and I've got my tool belt, and I'm ready to go. And we've been doing a lot of building at the Lanier Theological Library. My main job is director of the Lanier Theological Library, and I say very quickly that I'm not a librarian nor the son of a librarian at all. I mean, I appreciate the people that do that, but I'm more of an academic working in this role and trying to deepen the academic footprint of the library through conferences and through seminars and through teaching and training and podcasts and those kinds of things. So that's kind of my primary role. And I get an opportunity, Mike, to teach for Baylor University from time to time and other schools as well that will have me teaching a course pretty soon for Awakening School of Theology. And I was down in South Africa teaching a course in the Gospel of Matthew. So I get a chance to dabble in the academic teaching still, and I love it. I mean, that's just part of who I am, and I get to preach and teach and stuff like that from time to time. But my main job is as the academic director of the great Lanier Theological Library. And you lectured there back in, gosh, 5 or 6 years ago at least.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fantastic. It is like Wonderland for scholars. I remember you've got like this, Oxbridge style library, a
Yeah,
Byzantine chapel, and then like these kind of Italian villas. So it's
yeah,
and the zoo and the little train track around the place. So it is.
that's exactly
It is
right.
an amazing. It is an absolutely amazing place. I need to get
Well,
back sometime. I need to get back.
Well, we
But
need to figure out a way to get you here, maybe with a book or something that you're doing it. But when I park in the car park there and I walk down, I walk past a bunch of bunny rabbits that come out of the forest, and then there are ducks and swans and those kind of things. Now you want to stay away from the black swans
oh yeah,
because
those
the
dudes are
black swans,
gangsters. Those guys are
those
yeah.
are tough dudes.
Yeah,
They're
those
tough.
swans, they're massive. They are gangsters. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, those swans graceful and beautiful. It's like ballet instructors and the mafia made a baby. That's the way I would describe them. Those
That's
swans
my
are
way of thinking
swans
about
are
it.
just they're the gangsters of the lake. Oh man.
Yes. So yeah, we've got a wonderful, and we just finished a learning center that we built here. And you and I have talked about the fact that we have purchased a manor house from 1611 in north of Oxford, about 4 miles, called Yarnton Manor. And we're turning that into a learning center and a library. We'll have lectures there. We'll have hopefully scholars doing sabbaticals there. When we get all of the accommodations complete, Mike, we'll have 68 beds there. And some of those will be just one, little apartments. Some of those will be two, 3 bedroom apartments, so that families can come down. We already have people lining up to take sabbaticals there, so we're excited about that.
Yeah,
And we're
well,
working together with Wycliffe Hall, which I think you probably know Wycliffe Hall. and the Anglican College there at Oxford. But we're excited. We're excited about the future. A lot of great things happening.
Indeed, indeed. Well, I mean, returning to our pet topic of Christology, where I know
Mm.
you've definitely spent a lot of time and labours in your work on Christology. Have you had much to do with Colossians 1:15 to 20? I mean, this is a little like I think I said in our last episode, something of the poor cousin of Christology, because everyone either wants, Philippians 2:6 to 11, the Christ hymn. Maybe they do a bit of 1 Corinthians 8:6. But there's that kind of that text, Colossians 1, because I mean, and people
Yeah,
look down on it because people think, well, it may not even be by Paul. Maybe Colossians is
right.
pseudonymous. I've always loved Colossians because I think Colossians is what would happen if Galatians and Ephesians made a baby. So, that's my view of Colossians, and it's actually my favorite Pauline epistle.
It's a lovely
Yeah,
brief
I
epistle.
think
Yeah, it really
yeah,
is.
I think it is authentic. I think it's got enough Pauline themes. I can understand why people would think Paul didn't write, but I mean, when I tell people, look, the guy, when it comes to authorship, the guy who wrote Romeo and Juliet, a fantastic play, also wrote the boring and banal Titus Andronicus. Now, you might buy tickets to go see Romeo and Juliet for $600, but no one in their
Mm.
right mind would pay $600 to go watch Titus Andronicus, which I'm pretty sure Shakespeare wrote on a Friday afternoon, and it was
Mhm.
due to play Saturday morning. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
people can write in different ways. People can write in different ways. So I'm more
absolutely.
in favor of Pauline authorship. But getting to this wonderful Christ, call it the Christ text of Colossians 1. Uh, have you had much to do with this text in your various and many studies in Christology?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I really have because I'm with you. I'm fascinated with Colossians, and I'm fascinated with the beginning of the letter and how that this particular hymnic piece, however we describe it, I think it's clearly a early tradition that Paul is picking up and referring to. Exactly in what form he knew it earlier, as a hymn, as a just an elevated prose, whatever. However he knew it originally, I think he incorporates it here to discuss, what he talks about there in chapter 1 verse 13, who has redeemed us from the from the power of darkness and has transferred us into this the kingdom of his beloved son.
Yeah,
And I see that really as kind of the two-age view of history
yeah,
kind of unfolding and identifying Christ as the one who was the one who is the host of creation and the one who is now the host of the church. He's the one who has made it all possible, both creation and salvation. And so there's, like with Philippian hymn, where there's two parts. You've got the part where there's the coming down and the ascension, going up, the exaltation. Here you have two parts as well. One, the first part, 15 through, I guess, 15 through 17, really functions as a kind of a meditation on the role of Jesus, the role of the Christ, the Son of God, here the Son of the Beloved, in creation. And the second is in the idea of redemption and salvation in the church. So I think you've got two pieces here that are just beautifully knit together and reflective and parallel in structure. It's just gorgeous praise and prose to Christ. Exactly how it began. Is there a beginning piece
mm,
that this is taken out of? The beginning with a relative pronoun, that just doesn't strike us as being a very auspicious beginning. Who is the image of the invisible God,
mm.
right? Very powerful, very potent image to begin with, right? The one who is the image of the invisible God. I just finished. You probably know this, but I'm the New Testament editor now for the Word Biblical Commentary. And Clint Arnold has been working for 18 years on his commentary on Colossians.
Wow.
And he has just submitted it, and I've been reading through it, and it is brilliant. It is probably the best commentary on Colossians until you write yours, of course,
Oh, I've
right?
already written mine. I've already
I
written
mean,
mine.
I mean, I'm talking about big commentary,
Oh, okay, the big one. The big one.
the
Yeah.
big one, yeah, the big one,
Yeah, the
the
seven
big one. I
volumes.
mean,
Yeah.
this is like 2 volumes in Colossians,
What,
which is
two volumes on Colossians?
it probably they're probably going to crush it into one, but it's over 700 pages at this point.
Oh, okay,
So, but
wow.
it's brilliant. It's really brilliant. I mean, he's done a lot of work on Christ and the powers, right?
Yep.
And the whole what the world of that Asia Minor world would have been like that Paul is not knowledgeable of and and is relating to in this letter.
Mm.
And with you, I think Paul did write it. I'm not convinced that he's not the author of it for a lot of reasons. And part of it is the complexity of what it meant to write a letter
Mm.
like this in the ancient world, that it's
Yeah,
not a solo event. It's really a
exactly.
community event. There are a lot of people, involved in this, secretaries and co-senders and other people that he's reflecting off
Yeah,
of
he's
as he's
also
writing.
in prison. He could be like suffering from diarrhea and all sorts of things, and he's
Absolutely.
kind of,
Yeah.
he's narrating stuff to Timothy between vomiting sessions or something, or just trying not to pass out in some dingy cell. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think writing these things is much more complex than we can imagine at that point. But I do see this brilliance of the sort of the two sides of reflecting on creation on the one hand,
Mm.
and maybe even a reflection on wisdom. A lot of people have
Yeah,
made
yeah,
a case here. Yeah, yeah, image of God. You could argue that is sort of some sort of Adamic uh, principles that are coming through, but it's also very possibly a reflection upon wisdom, Jesus as the wisdom of God, as wisdom here as not just an attribute of God, but something greater than an attribute, one that would be, again, going back to the language that I like to use as manifestation, is a manifestation of God.
yeah.
And we've got plenty of Jewish text from that era that sort of demonstrate the creation, wisdom, connection.
Yeah, and there's so many things on this. Every line has got something you can chew over for ages. The meaning of image, is that image as per Adam, or is it more like image, as per wisdom? Firstborn over all creation.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I know some Jehovah's Witnesses. This is the John 3:16 of being a Jehovah's Witness. They love to say, "See, he's the
yeah,
firstborn, the first created thing of creation."
right, right.
And then
It's
you got
good
like
Aryan theology, right?
yeah, there's a whole bunch of things, all things created through him, by him, and also for him, and things
Yeah,
coming together. Yeah, I teach this periodically when I do Pauline Christology myself, but I have to break it down into two sermons when I've preached it in a church, largely along the lines in which you suggested. Those two aspects. So there's a lot of fascinating stuff going on here. David, what
yeah.
what what do you think is the main takeaway when because Paul's writing, his team are writing to the Colossians. He's got a lot of exhortations in that first chapter, a lot on the theme of reconciliation, a lot of thanksgiving for the Colossians.
Mm.
I know this is a bit off the cuff, but from memory, why do you think Paul drops this bit of prose or traditional material in here at this point? What do you think Paul's really trying to achieve here?
Yeah. I think part of that is uncovered in when Paul is describing the thrones and the rulers and the authorities and that kind of thing. I think Paul is entering into this world that they inhabit, where it is a world of multi dimensions of spiritual beings and spiritual powers, and he's making the preeminent case, or making a case for the preeminence of Christ, the first placeness of Christ in all of that. That whatever beings that they are thinking of and imagining, and maybe not imagining but experiencing, they feel like they're really experiencing these spiritual powers. Whatever beings there are out there, that they ultimately fall under the lordship of Christ. and that in all things, for all these reasons, that Christ is the preeminent one. And so I think it's a way of just situating Jesus in the prime place. Again, God has redeemed us from the old ways, the old powers, and has brought us now into the creation, or the kingdom of his beloved Son. And I think he's describing that kingdom with the king who sits upon that throne.
Yeah.
And the one who sits upon that throne is the one who is described in this hymn. And it's this hymn, whether or not they knew this hymn, I think they probably did. I think they probably been exposed to it. But whether or not they were, I think when they came to that and they're reading this, and they're in the middle of these parallel lines and the beauty of it and the rhythm of it, and I think that they would have been captured. The imagination would have been captured by it. So I think that's part of it, and the preeminence of Christ is all over it, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing that he might have first place in all things, right? I think that's really key. Just seeing his role in creation and seeing his role in redemption, both of which are two parallels of for a Jew, and I think even for Greeks, would have had something to do with the idea of where this world came from and where it's heading, right? Where we've been and where we're going. And I think it would have had a very compelling place. And of course, he finishes it off, as he always does, with the word of the cross, having made peace through the blood of the cross. That's really key for Paul.
Yeah, I think that's a very good summation, David. It's been a few years since I did my own commentary on Colossians, but yeah, I mean, I like the idea, like verses 12 to 14, this language of new Exodus and Jesus. I mean, the people being brought into the kingdom of literally the Son of His love, or the beloved Son. I
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
said.
that's right.
And
Son of his love.
he's the king. He's the king of that kingdom, and therefore he's supreme over everything else. I mean, Jesus has no rivals. There's no one else in his league. You could say Jesus is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. You know, there is no
Yeah,
LeBron or Tom Brady who can compete with him. Okay,
no, that's right.
he's in a different league. I mean,
Yeah,
everyone else, it's like, you know, it's like the under 10s basketball team trying to play one-on-one with LeBron James, who I'm led to
right.
believe is a basketball player in your part of the world. So yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's
I think that's exactly right. I think that's what's happening here in this, and you and I don't inhabit the kind of world the Colossians did,
mm,
where there are these spiritual powers that seem to be in charge of everything, charge of family life, in charge of fertility, in charge of the farming and the ranching and those kinds of things. We don't inhabit that kind of world anymore. But for those who did, I think this is the kind of letter that would have been a word on target for them, to sort of situate all of these other spiritual powers
yep,
underneath the lordship, the kingship of Jesus, and this kingdom that has come. And a lot of scholars have wondered, well, there's not a lot of kingdom language in Paul. Well, there's not as much as you see in the Gospels, but it is at very key places.
yeah,
And I think too, when you come to places like in Romans, where Paul talks about life in the Spirit, I think he's translated that Spirit language, or translated the kingdom language into the Spirit language. That it's the power of the Spirit, the life of the Spirit, that brings about this new work. So, and here's a place where kingdom language is very, very pronounced.
yeah, definitely.
It's a beautiful hymn, though. It's a beautiful hymn. And so, what do you do with the firstborn of all creation?
Ah, Lord, so which one?
The firstborn of all creation.
Yeah, well,
Verse
number one,
protekos.
I'm not Jehovah's Witness, so I don't think he's the first
Okay.
created being. I say,
Yeah.
look, this is language from the Psalms that talks about the Messiah. The Israel's king is Yahweh's firstborn, so it's more about a filial relationship. if Paul wanted to say he's the first created entity, there's other language he could have used. He could have used words like protoplasmos, first created, first made. There's a whole bunch of different terms you can use. But I mean, if you know anything about the Greek Bible, the Septuagint, the Old Testament in Greek, this language of prototokos is often used for the king of Israel. So I think it's more of a messianic term rather than a term saying he's literally the first thing that God made. It's more about preeminence than I think it's about preeminence. It's not about sort of the plasticity of what he's made or when he's made along those lines. So that's my understanding of firstborn.
No, with you, I take it more in relational terms. It's a relational term, and the firstborn was always kind of the key person, the key one in the family.
Yeah,
and we see in the Old Testament, and Israel is referred to as the firstborn of God.
Yep, that's exactly right. Exodus 4, I think.
Exodus 4, I think it is. Yeah, so I think that it's a relational term, it's a covenant term, messianic term. All of that is sort of encapsulated with that, and it has nothing to do with, you could say rank, yes, you could say temporality before, but I think it's more important that it's relational in that way. So, yeah, I think I wasn't sure exactly how you would come down on that, but I thought maybe that's what you would do with it.
Yeah, that's the way I take it. That's the way I take it. Well, we've only scratched the surface of Colossians 1:15-20. I'm hoping to do a whole bunch of follow-up episodes and interviews exploring further aspects. I'll probably have to maybe have a chat with Clinton Arnold in the future.
He's great soul, and he's done some wonderful work on all this. So again, other than your commentary, it's going to be the best one on the market.
Obviously. Well, I think there's a lot of good commentaries on Colossians out there. I mean, Jimmy Dunn has his one.
Yeah.
I think even
you're right.
M.M. Thompson's got a pretty good one too. M.M. Thompson, and and even my good buddy in exegetical crime, Nijay Gupta. I think he's spent a bit of time
one as well
in Colossians. So it's fun. But a lot of things to do there.
Well, this will be another year and a half or so before it comes out. So probably 2024 before it comes out. But it is going to be one of the more thorough and involved, in-depth commentaries on it. So
I bet.
I look forward to it being out.
The big problem I think we have with Colossians is Colossae has never been excavated. There are plans to excavate it. There are plans, and I think once that place has been excavated, everything's going to have to be rewritten. So I think that's my prognostication that once we finally do get around, the problem is the Turkish government's like it's just a mound of green. What do you want to do? What do you want to dig that up for? They abandoned it like in the 5th century. There's nothing there but Byzantine junk. So they say go.
No clue what's under the surface, right?
They're like, hey, go to Ephesus, go to Hierapolis. That's where all the cool stuff is.
That's right. We've already excavated that. Go there.
Go there. When you're looking at Colossae for. But we'll have to see what they find. We'll have to see what they find when they finally do dig it up. Yeah,
it will change the landscape of the Colossian discussion a great deal, though, I think.
Yeah.
Once we have the physical, material evidence of life there.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. Well, anyway, David, a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for the previous episode on Philippians 2 and for talking to us about Colossians 1. That has been awesome. God bless you, my friend, and I'll probably see you around a Biblical Studies conference or maybe one day in the new Lanier Learning Center or that really bodacious study place you've got up in Oxford. So we'll see what the future holds.
I hope to see you in both places, Mike. I really do.
That would be good. That would be good. Well, take care, David, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks. My pleasure.
Well, that concludes the episode of Nazareth Nicaea. Hope you really enjoyed it. If you like, leave a comment, leave a question. If you're enjoying the material you're hearing, then share it with your friends wherever they are. If you're listening it on the podcast vision, hey, please leave us a review. It'll help get the word out about the program and spread this show as it tries to educate, edify, and just get people interested and excited about studying early Christology. I'm Mike Bird, and thanks for listening.